Hi, folks. Welcome to One True North's SCV Leadership and Business Solutions Weekly Podcast. And I'm Paul Raggio.
And I'm Lisa Raggio, and we are here to help SCV business owners find your way today, tomorrow, and in the future. And we're excited to be partnering with The Signal to bring you best practice leadership and business tips each week.
Lisa, I just got off a webinar, and it was with the Chamber of Commerce, and they've launched the Small Business Roundtable. I co-hosted it with Paul Butler, who's the owner of New Leaf Training and Development. And the roundtable's purpose is really to bring business owners in the community together who are chamber members and to be able to tee up some of the challenges that they're experiencing in their day-to-day work. And trust is developed between those that are participating. And this is a monthly opportunity for business owners in the community to get great advice and talk about some of their challenges that they have in leading their business. And one of the subjects that came up today was really interesting, is that one of the participants said, "Hey, I've heard a lot about culture. What does culture mean?" And so in the military, it's called command climate, and it can be positive or negative. And throughout the time period that we're going to be doing our podcast, we're going to talk a lot about culture and what leadership means to presenting a very positive culture to your business. Now, we have 14 points of culture for our business. And last week, we talked about the first one, which was servant leadership. Our second one is teamwork. And when we define teamwork, it means to us we work with others to achieve win-win solutions and positive outcomes where all the team members benefit. And we're committed to a culture of teamwork, which is openness and collaborative with each other and our clients, that prioritizes really a collective impact for the greater good, more than individual agendas. So we wanted to put that up front. Culture will be a part of our discussion in terms of leadership and best business practices. And with that, I know Lisa's going to do the introduction of our guest, who's just very steeped in leadership. Lisa?
Yes, we are so excited that this week we are going to have Bill Miranda as our guest. And there's a lot to learn from Bill Miranda. So we're very excited. I want to read to you some of his background, and then we're going to get into a great conversation about leadership. Bill Miranda, Santa Clarita City Council member and Mayor Pro Tem, is an Air Force veteran, local business owner, motivational speaker, former CEO of the Santa Clarita Valley Latino Chamber of Commerce, published author, and a community leader in championing minority causes. Bill was born and raised in New York City. He attended military school and went on to serve in the U.S. Air Force. He has a bachelor's degree in engineering, a master's in management systems, and has completed a year of doctoral studies in organizational management. His corporate career includes time with many Fortune 500 companies, including IBM, Xerox, and Data General. And he's lived in Santa Clarita for the last 34 years. Currently, he is president of Bill Miranda Consulting and editor-in-chief of Our Valley Santa Clarita. He has also been a prominent voice in the community, hosting Leadership Starts With You on KHTS, Our Valley Santa Clarita on SCV TV, and has served on many nonprofit boards. And I can honestly say, as we have gotten to know Bill more, I am inspired by his leadership and his genteel and warm approach, a very warm and wise man. And we have a lot to learn from him. So with that, let's get started with some questions.
Yeah, Bill, it really is. It's been a pleasure getting to know you better, and certainly you're what we would call an abundant thinking leader. You give so much back to the community. But
Thank you.
one of the things that we've talked about is a void in leadership. And let's just to start this out, what do you believe is the most absent leadership skill or attribute among leaders or executives within the community?
Well, first of all, I want to say thank you very much for having me on the show. thank you guys for doing the show. This will be a great addition to knowledge within the Santa Clarita Valley. And we're so happy that you're doing this show for all of us. Second of all, I tend to be a humble guy, and sometimes I hear my introductions or people introducing me, and I cringe a little bit. Yeah, I've done a lot of things in my life, but that's probably because I'm old and I've had a lot of years to do a lot of things. So I don't view myself as having done any more than anybody else, but I will share the knowledge and wisdom with you that I've accumulated throughout the years. So that's my hello. Now I'm going to answer your question. I think that the biggest void in leadership that I see right now versus, maybe 40, 50 years ago was there's a perception that leaders are made, or that leaders are born, not made now, that I wish didn't exist. Okay, leaders are not born. Leaders are made. They're made by experiences. They're made by training. They're made by absorbing knowledge. And I use the expression, become a sponge. When you're young and inexperienced, or even joining a new job, you may be my age. Look, I was in my early 70s when I joined the city council, and I became a sponge that first 6 months. Learn, learn, learn. Always be learning, ABL. Always be learning at any stage in your career. Always be learning. So to answer your question directly, I think there is a lack of training and understanding as to what it takes to be a leader. Okay, there's such a thing, and forgive me for going on and on and on, but there's such a thing as being the boss. That's not the same thing as being the leader. All right, being the boss just means you have the position. Being the leader means you can make things happen, right? And so, to answer your question directly, I think the void is in getting training and experience before we're put into leadership positions.
Bill, I'm so encouraged by your comment, because one of my greatest lessons in working with female veterans and working on programs that were military to civilian leadership transition programs for veterans, female veterans, was being in training with them as the only civilian and observing their military experience, and them thinking because of their rank that they weren't leaders yet, and having these wonderful conversations about what it means to lead. And when you are positively influencing someone else and leading them up, which the military does so beautifully, we all have an opportunity to lead. We're one decision away. We're one good decision away from making a step forward in leading. And when you do that enough times, you're building leadership muscles. But I'm encouraged by what you say, because you're right. There's other people who think the opposite, and it's a limited way to think and look at it. But if we can invite other people to and encourage them to think about how they can lead, I think that we would have a better and stronger community and country overall.
Absolutely. If I have time, let me tell two quick stories. When I was in the Air Force and I was in a leadership position by title, okay, I flew an airplane, and I was young and arrogant as hell, and there I was getting into my airplane, and a staff sergeant, kind of grabs hold of my flight suit and pulls me down before I could get into the cockpit. And he says, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, "Well, wait a minute, man. I'm the cat's meow. You can't grab me by my flight suit and pull me down." And he said to me, and he was in his 30s. Okay, so I'm in my very early 20s. He's in his 30s. He said to me, "This is my aircraft." Okay, my aircraft. Did I learn a lesson then? Just because I have the title doesn't mean I have the leadership position. And so the second story I want to tell, fast forward about 10 years, I go to work for IBM. I'm a hotshot salesman for IBM, and I start selling mainframe computers. And one of the techies, who was at that time about 10 years older than me, pulls me over and says, "Hey, you may be selling this stuff, but I'm the guy that has to install it." So he kind of pulled me by the reins and said, "This is my computer." So my point is, just because you have the title doesn't make you the leader. And you have to observe when you're that sponge, when you're that person that I said has to be learning, always be learning. When you're that sponge, observe everything. Absorb everything too, but observe everything. Notice who the leaders are in every situation, and then try and emulate them. Why are they leaders? Sometimes you're a leader because you have more knowledge than anybody else. Sometimes you're a leader, again, by title. Sometimes you're a leader by your ability to persuade people. Sometimes you're a leader because you're a servant, right? And we mean that in a very positive way. A servant leader is a leader that acknowledges everybody's thinking, everybody's thoughts, everybody's ideas, and then helps them bring their ideas to fruition, right? And you guys could probably talk more about servant leadership than I can. But basically, right, you can be a servant leader and serve everybody. So you turn the pyramid upside down, the leadership pyramid upside down. Instead of you being on the top, you're at the very bottom, serving everybody. That's a leader also.
Yeah, you bring up just some excellent points in terms of basic leadership skills, Bill. And, we opened with this whole concept of culture and what it means and how dynamic it is to those that are followers. And it's just the inspiration that a leader provides, and it's a motivator for them. Talk a little bit about what you've seen in your consulting experience about good cultures and bad cultures that you've uh, dealt with in terms of some of your own clientele.
Well, I can tell you a quick story about what happened when I was in Europe for a large corporation, Data General, and a country manager. I went to visit the country, and I won't mention the country, but I went to visit a country, and I noticed that all the office doors were shut. There was a quietness around the facilities. There were probably 40, 50 people in the facility. And if people said hello to you, it was a quick hello, and that was it. There was no stopping for conversation or anything. And I noticed that. And I thought, this is wrong. I know I'm an American. I know, I may not understand the culture of that country as well as I should, but something's wrong when all the doors are shut and when people barely say hello to you in the halls. So we changed the country manager. The new country manager came in, and the first thing he did was he removed all the doors. All the doors in all the offices, he removed them. Now, all of a sudden, people had to see each other. People didn't hide. People didn't have all these private conversations. And he also made it mandatory that every morning, everybody got together in the warehouse and they all discussed what the business of the day was going to be. And within 3 months, that country, the entire culture was changed. Now, it's hard to change a culture in 3 months. But if you're direct enough and want to absolutely affect the culture change, then sometimes you have to do some things that are, as we say in the business, brutal, right? So we replaced the country manager. That's brutal. The new country manager came in and replaced the doors, took away everybody's privacy. That's brutal. But the culture change was affected, and the new culture caused great results for the company. So that's
And Bill, when you share that story, my first thought is inclusion, creating an inviting environment and inclusion. And we hosted a workshop last week, and we had a partner from a law firm talk to us about diversity and inclusion. And a question came up about how can our cultures, how can our environments be more inclusive? And she said, my number one recommendation is have 15-minute coffee convo conversations one-on-one with your team and just talk about how are you doing? How's it going? And how that can really just build this warm and inviting environment. And that is key to leadership too, because if we don't create cultures in which we can approach one another and then feedback as well, it's very hard to grow. Very hard to grow if we're not doing that. So my takeaway from that story is inclusion. You know, it took down the doors and having people starting to come out and feel inclusive with one another, and the approach too, how important that approach is.
That's
Yeah,
so true. Go ahead, Paul.
yeah, I often talk about one of the hardest skills for a leader is communication, and our tip of the week is going to be talking about that. But leaders have to master that. They have to master how to be able to best inspire people, and not only communication verbally, but through body language, adjustments that they have to make. And it's just an important skill set. And like you said early on, these are things that can be learned. It's not necessarily you have to be born with it, but these are skills that you could be learning today and that there's a void in. And
Yeah.
we're excited about you taking over as mayor of Santa Clarita. And we also know that part of leadership is having a vision and the importance of being able to express that vision to the public at large and your followers. So talk a little bit about visioning and how important that is to leadership, and maybe some of your thoughts about Santa Clarita too.
Well, let's stay with vision for a moment. A leader has to have a vision as to what the end result is going to look like. So you have to be somewhat like a chess player, all right? It's not about every move you make. It's about the end result you're trying to achieve. So when I look at the city of Santa Clarita, we've been a city for almost 33 years now. So we have a population that's approaching 250,000 people. We won't know for sure until after the census is taken. We're approaching 250,000 people, and our valley is approaching 300,000 people. We only have 33 years of infrastructure building. So if you look at Pasadena, if you look at Glendale, if you look at Torrance, if you look at Beverly Hills, if you look at many cities throughout LA County, population-wise, they're smaller than us, but they've had 50, 100, 150, sometimes 200 years or more of building infrastructure. We haven't had that. We've got 33 years of building infrastructure. So yes, we've built 35 parks. Some of them are very outstanding, by the way. We've built an activity center with an aquatic center and a bike park that we just broke ground on and opened. We have a lot of things going on, but we don't have an art museum. We don't have a real historic center. We don't have a real multicultural center. We don't have, we have entertainment centers such as the PAC and the Newhall Theater for the Performing Arts and the Canyon Theater Guild and the Maine. But we don't have facilities that accommodate sufficient attendance, sufficient people to bring in first level acts, okay, to bring in stars. We don't have that. We have one of the best football leagues in the county, okay? Mm-hmm. The football teams up here in Santa Clarita are outstanding. The high school football teams I'm talking about, they're outstanding. We should have an outstanding football stadium that those teams can play in. Right? We don't have that. and I can go on and on and on, the things we don't have. We need to build a lot more infrastructure. And so my vision, and you can tell from what I just mentioned, my vision is to start building that infrastructure. Now, we have the Canyon Country Community Center coming in early next year. We have the new sheriff station coming in relatively early next year. Newhall Crossings is ready to open in Newhall, including the Lemley Theater. So we have a number of things going on right now that are going to add infrastructure. We need to do a lot more.
Yeah, Bill, you're reminding me of one of the first conversations we had, I think 9 months ago. I know it was before COVID, but it was music to my ears when you started to talk about what you envisioned. And Paul and I were born and raised in Glendale, have worked a lot in Glendale and Pasadena. And interestingly enough, Paul, when you talk about culture, starting the conversation with culture, those things that you're talking about, Bill, as you know more than I, speak to a culture and community of being inclusive. And those art projects and what we can do to have a multicultural community center, that is something that for all of us, we can look to and say, okay, we all have a place and space here in this valley, and we all have a unique contribution to be making. And I'm thrilled. I think that we've been ready for something like that for a long time and looking forward to a future. And there's so much to build. There's so much potential. That's the other thing that's really exciting about this valley. And with your leadership, I have no doubt that those things are going to take flight.
We have had an incredibly strange, for lack of a better term, 14 months, 15 months. It started with the tick fire. A lot of people don't know this, but we had 40,000 people that had to find a place to stay because we had to evacuate them from the fires. 40,000 people. And then that was followed shortly thereafter by the tragic shootings at Saugus High School. And we had over 15,000 people at Central Park for the memorial ceremony over there.
Yeah.
And then we start the new year optimistic, ready to go, and we're hit with the pandemic. These are tragic things all in a row. And then we're hit with the protests. Again, really tragic things to happen to any community. Necessary, but tragic at the same time. So how do we recover from that is going to tell what kind of community we are, right? So any one of those situations are recoverable over time, but you put them all together and all of a sudden, you know, and I give Mayor Smythe so much credit for the work that he has done this year in helping us as a community get through all of this. But I have to continue that, all right? I have to continue what he's done and I have to build on it and learn from it. We did most things right. Some things we need to adjust, and that's okay. We're starting a human resources roundtable. It's going to be announced very shortly. It's going to be approximately 15, 16 members of the community, outstanding members of the community from all walks of life that are going to get together and talk about human resources and inclusion, as you say, Lisa. We're going to make sure that we're including every community, every segment of our community into every decision we make. So we're going to meet regularly. I'm blessed to be the chair of that inclusion committee, that what we call the Human Resources Roundtable. And you're going to see this coming year some very, very dramatic changes in the way we do things and the way we think in how we are more inclusive as a community.
Wow, that is wonderful to hear. That's
Sure
excellent.
is.
Yeah.
And you know, that leads us right into our tip of the week. And we focus on it by summarizing our past article that we wrote. And this last one was titled, "The Cream Always Rises to the Top." And not to embarrass you, Bill, but you're one of those that have risen to the top in our community. And so I mean, I've never worked in the dairy industry, but I've sure heard this metaphor a lot. Uh, but it's really about seeing those leaders in critical periods rise to the occasion. And we're in one of those crisis periods right now. And you mentioned a lot of that, Bill, just covering the past 14 months and what's happened in the Santa Clarita community. But we, in times of crisis, we thirst for leaders who express vision and exhibit conviction. They get judgment right. They're clear and direct and purposeful, and most importantly, inspirational in their communications. And we follow leaders who offer visions beyond today, tomorrow, and next month. And those visions are truly rooted in faith, hope, and charity. And one of the things that's most important is communication. All types of communication, whether it's written, spoken, nonverbal, and it's compounded by your own emotions, your gestures, your expressions. And man, it's exacerbated by ill-chosen words and misguided behavior sometimes. But if you get clear, direct, purposeful, and inspirational communication as a skill, and a lot of people don't possess this, and so we find that poorly communicated good ideas are lost. Misunderstandings occur because the communicator creates confusion resulting from their lack of clarity or the directness in their message. And then you see all the time many regrets are expressed by leaders who wish they could retrieve one of those poorly communicated messages because it caused an unintended outcome. And so there's no level of leadership immune to poor communication. And like any other critical skill, clear, direct, purposeful, and inspirational communication, whether it's written, spoken, nonverbal, it requires considerable effort on each of our parts to get it right. And Bill, you opened up this conversation with saying, you know, leaders can be taught to be leaders. These are skills that they can be taught and then actually tested on through life experiences. So talk a little bit about that and when we come close to closing here.
Well, yeah, when you mention communication, people need to understand communications includes two things, two major things. One is a sender and two is a receiver. So you could be perfect in the message that you send, but if the receiver doesn't receive it, the communication is broken. It's not complete, right? So I may be one who speaks slowly. You may be one who listens rapidly. And if I speak too slowly and you're listening too rapidly, you fill my voids with what you think I'm saying. Okay. And the opposite holds true too. If you think slowly and I speak rapidly, I'm assuming you're listening to everything I'm saying and you're only processing at a lower speed, so you're missing half of what I'm saying. Right? So it's very important to understand when communicating with others how they receive your message, how they receive that communication. Can they hear you clearly? Do they understand your language? I speak to millennials all the time, and every time I speak to millennials, I learn new words. Okay, it's like they have their own vocabulary. So you have to understand, are they understanding you? So you need to add regular feedback. So when you deliver a message, did you understand? Can you repeat it back to me? How are you going to process? How are you going to handle what I just said? So that you get clarity that they've understood your message. Because if they don't understand your message, you could be the greatest communicator in the world. If you're communicating to the wrong people who are not receiving it the way you are sending it, then the communication is broken. All of that, by the way, can be learned. You guys teach it, okay? I teach it. And there's a way of communicating and understanding both ends of that communication cycle.
Priceless. That is, anybody who's listening to this, you just got a whole bunch of knowledge in a golden bite-sized nugget from Bill, because you're so right. And it's a great reminder to us too. The receiving of it is equally, if not more important than sending the message. And you can have the best of intentions, but if you're not mindful of your audience and how they're receiving it, it's perhaps at that time lost words.
Hey, we always end with some takeaways, and man, I've got a few that I want to talk through here. One is that, you started out ABL, always be learning. That's a key trait for any leader. And then the second one I picked up, which is so important, is this whole concept of inclusion versus exclusion. And leadership is always about inclusion. How do you include those followers to bring the greatest value out of them? Lisa, what were some of yours?
Yeah, they were the same. And also, I loved Bill starting out with, as I shared my experience with female veterans, it was a lovely reminder to me of witnessing them become empowered, because they realized they had put a lot of emphasis on rank. And because they weren't there yet, they didn't think that they had it. And so Bill encouraging us to think about, we all have an opportunity to lead. It's muscle that we can develop and can continue to grow. Absolutely, in regards to his vision with being an inclusive community, I think that that's going to set the bar in regards to Santa Clarita being a model community. It already is. It's going to enhance it and enrich it even more. And then communications, spot on in regards to when we're thinking about what we're going to say. It's so important about how we say it. We said this before, Paul, that we're big believers in the platinum rule. And the golden rule says, treat others as you would want to be treated. Platinum rule says treat others as they would want to be treated. And that has a large part and emphasis in communications, and framing it so that that receiver will take it in the way that you intended to say it.
Bill, we can't thank you enough for being our guest. It's you've certainly given us a lot of stuff to digest and contemplate and enhance our own leadership skills with.
Thank you very much, and thank you for doing the show. I really mean it sincerely. You two have added a lot to our community, and I'm sure you're going to continue to do so. Pretty soon, you guys are going to be really famous and achieving all kinds of great things here in the community. Love you guys, and thank you for having me on the show.
Hey,
Thanks,
and thank
Bill.
you. And that means a lot coming from you. And we're just going to take a couple more minutes to close out, because what we do every single week is we give an announcement and we talk about a business spotlight of the week. So Paul, I know you wanted to talk about an announcement of an event coming up.
Yeah, we've got a great event for business owners and leaders in the community. It's Friday, December 4th from 8 to 11:30. We titled it Growth Club, and it's in partnership with the Chamber of Commerce. And Growth Club means focusing on your business plan for 2021 and specifically focusing on the first quarter and what you need to do. Now, we remain in this pandemic. You can't wish this away. We don't expect a new normal to be established until probably spring, early summer of next year, once the therapeutics are in place, as well as a vaccine is being distributed to the general population. But you can plan, and you should be planning, on how to thrive once the pandemic and the impact of the pandemic is over. So this workshop really focuses on those things that you need to look at in the first quarter to really establish your entire business for 2021. The cost to chamber members is $395. Non-members, it's $495. Go to the chamber website. You can register for it now, and we hope to see you there. And the price is for a business, so 3 people can attend. And then as an added value, we're providing 6 group coaching sessions as a follow-on to help you really build your first quarter 90-day plan. Lisa?
Excellent. And before we wrap it up, we want to give a shout out to our business spotlight of the week. And this week, it's a spotlight on Patterson's Collision Center. Patterson's Collision Center has been here for almost 20 years in the Santa Clarita Valley. They're your one-stop shop resource in regards to collision for your car. And we encourage you to go to their website, and their website is pattersonscollisioncenter.com. You're going to find a really neat story about who we are. This is a family-owned operation, and they have deep roots in collision that came from Burbank, but they have a really neat message on their website in regards to who they are. So we encourage you to check them out. And we encourage you to go to our website, onetruenorthcoach.com. We have a lot of good information on there that we hope is helpful to you to help you navigate through today, tomorrow, and in the future. We have a COVID-19 resource page, and we have opportunities for you to learn more about who we are, what we do, and how we serve. So that's onetruenorthcoach.com. And we always offer a complimentary business diagnostic to business owners. That's a free assessment for your business, and we can give you our insight, no strings attached. Or you could always call us for a 30-minute complimentary business consultation as well. So this has been a delight. We look forward to seeing you all next week. We will have another guest on here, but I can't tell you how great it was to talk to Bill Miranda today. Warm and wise. That's my takeaway in regards to our Mayor Pro Tem, Bill Miranda, and look forward to seeing you all next week. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Bill.